There you go.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. We're just getting to the beginning of it all, so we're going to record everything that has substance here. In addition to being able to discover collaborators and leverage analytical tools from the larger author profile tool available, it really allows your faculty to search for mentors, collaborators, and potentially even recruiting targets can be identified. Scopus has the most accurate and precise author and institution profiles, period. So we do have metrics for journals built right in. And journal metrics like site score tracker are standard components of Scopus, possibly eliminating the need for additional subscriptions to products that are produced once a year, such as the journal citation reports. I'll highlight these metrics for you in a moment when we go live in the demo. I also wanted to make mention early on that if current citations are being attributed to long ago published works, or perhaps to titles that are not currently being covered in Scopus, those citations are still captured if they're in fact being attributed in titles that we are indexing. So along with the most reliable journal, author, and article metrics, Scopus offers built-in APIs and analytical tools which assist in time savings, all in one database. This combination of all these rings with the bullseye of 7,000 publishers offers a blueprint to greater competitive advantage in a very economical package to those that are leveraging Scopus for their data discovery. So what does this really mean to you? Well, this allows you to trace the relationships between the researchers, their output, and the institutions they represented, so you can see who is doing what research around the world. It is a distinguishing characteristic of Scopus. It's been incorporated from the start, linking a paper to an author to an institution. So ultimately, the question for librarians is, how can this help us? And first and foremost, it ensures data quality. You want to make certain that you have something you can rely upon. Easy access for to critical global research. Gaining insights for research strategy and discussions with your stakeholders. It's also about improving workflow efficiency, particularly with an ongoing SciVal subscription. You can actually bring the two together to be even more efficient with your workflow. And achieving integration in your databases and platforms is important to improve your discovery across your resources. So why is an API important? Because it's the customer choice for integration and programs. The API is built in. For faculty now, Scopus makes it easier for you to manage your reputation. You can do this directly with the author profile wizard. You can do this by connecting your ORCID ID, or perhaps even on your own personal web page with it, leveraging the Scopus API. It allows you to identify those collaborators, those commercial partners, reviewers, or experts in the field, or maybe even better evaluate what journals you should be submitting your manuscript to. All in an effort to remain up to date with the latest developments, of course. So the integration of data between SciVal and Scopus provides data sets with connective tissue. SciVal analysis provides you with an array of reliable metrics and indicators. You can then seamlessly dive deep into discovery with Scopus. I don't know if any of the questions here on the screen are resonating with you. If by chance you want to let us know what does and doesn't in chat, it would be very helpful. But ultimately, what we're able to provide with this combination is a complete solution set to answer questions like, see who has funded what sort of research in the past, track experts and rising stars, identify opportunities not just for collaboration, but then maybe team science. Also analyzing your institution's output, impact, as well as identifying areas with momentum for potential growth. So while we're on the topic of momentum, let's briefly touch upon topics of prominence. And why is this metric important? There's a direct correlation between topics with high levels of momentum and funding. Henry Small, a former colleague over at ISI, and Dick Clavens, a contractor there at Thomson for many years, they partnered with Elsevier. And now, topics of prominence, this happens to be a SciVal-driven tool, but we've recently populated some of this data in Scopus at the article level data, which I'll highlight for you as well. There's about 97,000 global research topics. And what Prominence does is it says, what are the recent citations? What are the recent views and the site score journal metrics? And let's create a momentum chart. It's not the same as importance, but it does help researchers and research managers identify which topics are going to likely be well funded. There are various types of entities making important decisions leveraging Scopus data. Some of these are included on display on the slide for you. They're obviously global in nature, and they range from funding bodies to ranking organizations. It is a bold statement, but I actually believe in its truth. Scopus has more global users. There's additional and consistent investment towards quality and content, so much so that we've surpassed the competition in many people's eyes. And the two premier sources for ranking data solely use Scopus metadata. SciVal and Scopus really do create a nice 1-2 punch and the power behind the rankings. So research output data from Scopus, SciVal provide THE, Times Higher Education, QS, that you see on the screen here, points that they need to formulate and develop the World University Rankings. Citations account for a significant portion, as you can see based upon these percentages, for both of the rankings. Understanding the different approaches and how citations are used and normalized in their methodologies can help universities interpret and apply ranking information to strengthen plans, or perhaps persuade particular decision-making that can affect ranking outcomes. Now, I am aware that there's many universities similar to size in Georgia State, which have mission statements about actually increasing their rankings. I didn't know if there were any particular efforts being made now, or that it's an area of interest. Any feedback on this topic would be of great interest to us for sure. So I'd be remiss if I didn't at least make mention of the current environment we find ourselves in. And COVID has been a great equalizer. It has not selected out any one particular culture or economy, and it's temporarily brought the world to a halt. There's been a period of great adaptation, and it's ongoing. There's a new normal where geography limits are less clear than ever before. Leveraging digital data and collaboration tools will only continue to expand as we move forward. Elsevier's global discovery position to work with the international content was validated, in my eyes, by Clarivate when I was there, when they actually released the Emerging Sources Citation Index. Since global representation has been integral from the start, you can visualize here on this slide the additional coverage Scopus supplies across the world when compared to a competitor. As a result, Scopus to me seems to be very well positioned for the world that lies ahead. This background noise, okay. I do recognize and appreciate the positioning, as I leveraged it myself for 15 years by Clarivate, stating they are an independent third party. My question then as an employee remains the same now as a competitor, which is, why is that important if the Content Selection Advisory Board is independent as well? And furthermore, has anyone ever really taken into account that Elsevier titles represent a larger portion of WAS metadata as compared to Elsevier data as found in Scopus? Elsevier could very well have hired people to make content decisions. Instead, what they did was they reached out to experts in their fields who are independent of Elsevier. And this is the distinction between Scopus and Web of Science, because Clarivate has an in-house staff making such decisions. Agreed. Our experts only meet a couple of times a year physically, but all content conversations are ongoing. And particularly in the digital world that we're living in right now, which is completely virtual, there has not been a gap in their ability to perform what's necessary of them. I also wanted to recognize the changes at Clarivate regarding content review. Moving from that 1, 2, or maybe even 3-year life cycle of review is now extending out many more years than previous rounds. And if there are rejections, if there are multiple rejections for the same title, you could be looking at 5 or 7 years or greater from what I understand. So it seems unfair to me for up and coming titles to wait such a long time for another glance, another opportunity to be included. In fact, there was a customer that told me that they are leveraging Scopus to track those up and coming titles, referencing the journal metrics available for those titles as a way that they are actually watching the slow rise. Very simply, this slide is just to point out the fact that we go well past just journals. And I wanted to highlight, we are updating daily. Approximately 10,000 articles per day are being indexed. About 16.5 million open access documents are in existence. We're nearing 750,000 of preprints from multiple preprint servers. Of course, the conference events and the conference papers are there. Books, almost 2 million total items found there, with a focus on the social sciences and arts and humanities areas. And then, of course, patent information as well from the 5 major patent offices. So I was asked to point out differences between Web of Science content and Scopus content. And these next 2 slides are my attempt visually to present it to you in the simplest form that I've been able to come up with. Scopus is all-inclusive coverage. It's broader than Web of Science. And the Web of Science core collection has over 21,000 unique titles, and it's represented in 4 databases. We've got the Science Citation Index, the Social Science, Arts and Humanities. And then, of course, they've added, most recently, the Emerging Sources Citation Index. Web of Science is sold in modules, with archives being sold separately. And only customers that buy all 4 databases with complete archives will have the coverage of the 21,000 titles. The overlap with Scopus, as you can see here, it's very tight. It's at a 99% threshold. For ESCI, it's just about 60%. And the reason why is because 41% of the titles as found in ESCI were actually rejected by our content board. These titles do not meet the quality standards for Scopus coverage, while they are continuing to be covered right now in Emerging Sources Citation Index. Now, the previous slide, we also saw that Scopus has about 25,000 active titles, but the total number of titles found in Scopus is just under 40,000. For this analysis, I used that number to compare it against Web of Science, because all Web of Science numbers include both active and inactive titles. Oops, my apologies. Active and inactive titles. This is the simplest way for me to describe what the difference is with Scopus. Compare Scopus to Web of Science, where everything is sold as a separate package. That model actually doesn't allow you to comprehensively find and analyze research, because ultimately you don't know what's missing based on your institution subscriptions, plural. So we have everything from the core content to the emerging sources. Then we move out to the regional literature, to some of the specialist literature, including some of the patent information. Scopus is all inclusive. You subscribe to Scopus, you get everything. Now, I also understand the viewpoint that perhaps too much data can be daunting to sort through. Well, I wanted to make mention that Scopus actually creates a more granular category segmentation. Web of Science currently uses about 235 subject category areas. Scopus has about 100 more at 334 for their index, for our index content. With Scopus, once you subscribe, you have access. It's pure and simple, diversity in data. So as I wrap things up here, I really just wanted to provide you with kind of a recap and a value statement. Obviously, the 7,000 publishers, obviously the affiliations, obviously the authorship that we have. The value statement obviously is what you might expect, being able to quickly find relevant and trusted research, being able to quickly identify those experts, being able to access reliable data, metrics, and analytical tools to support making confident decisions around your research and discovery strategy. And it's all from one database in a single subscription. Now, Scopus certainly offers value add as well to the research office and Wolfgang in the form of interconnectivity in the metadata to enrich their discovery and analysis efforts using CSAB. To those leveraging Web of Science for exploratory information deep dives, what you are going to do in Web of Science can absolutely be done in Scopus. It's just going to cost less. With that, I wanted to take 2 minutes and just walk you through a couple of slides of what's included in the appendix. I'm not really going to touch upon them, but since we will be providing this detail to you, first and foremost, the evaluation and the reevaluation process, some additional content on that. Next, diving in a little bit deeper to the PlumX. I don't know if everyone is familiar with PlumX. We will touch upon that in the demo. Some additional information regarding the journal metrics that's found in Scopus. The difference between Scopus, the Scopus API, and custom data that we can extract from Scopus for alternative purposes as well. The historical depth of content. Transparency to our selection criteria. This is something that I know, I believe Elsevier does a better job of explaining exactly what we're doing, how we're doing it, and what's the methodology that's being employed. Some additional resources for you to consider at your leisure. And then 2 quick screenshots of some of the information we're going to be diving into together today. Scott, let me pause. Is there anything that we should be addressing as far as questions go before we start exploring?
Nope, nothing in chat right now.
Great. So then let's go live in the system. And I'm actually going to do this slightly out of order, probably, of what Kenyatta's used to saying. And it's primarily because I want to spend the most time and point out what's different about Scopus as compared to what you're familiar with. So let's start off with sources. And I just very simply clicked on this tab right here. And you'll see I have a drop down. I can select by subject area title, the types of selectivity that you might be very well used to. Left-hand side, you're also going to see the ability to create some thresholds and filter, quartile and source type. But let's jump into, let's just say the very first title. So what you'll see here is not only the ISSN number, but you'll also find the Elsevier identifying number. You'll also find for a particular journal what subject areas they find themselves part of. Site score, SJR, and SNP information is all here. You can always click on any of these icons to learn more if you're not completely familiar with those. But quickly, SNP is the citation potential in the field. It takes that information into account. And SJR basically says it's a scientific prestige. Not all citations are created equal. So it's taking that into account. Really what I wanted to focus on and where I wanted to come in here was because I wanted to highlight site score and site score tracker at the start. So site score, you'll see the definition here. You're probably familiar with the 3-year impact factor. You're probably familiar with the 5-year impact factor. Site score actually goes right down the middle and says we're going to take 4 years into account. And you can in fact see last year's information. If you want to explore the citations and the documents, you certainly can. They'll directly link you to those. But what I really like is the fact that everyone is always trying to figure out, where do I stand? So if site score updates once a year, site score tracker creates a monthly update for you. It tells you, how am I trending? So there's never any guesswork here. And again, we're making everything completely visible as to the citations and the documents. Site score rank and trend. Very simply, we're part of two different categories, and we can drop down and pick either of them and see where we stand. And of course, where all of our peers are as well within that particular category. You'll also notice that there's a chart on the side to be able to visualize what the site score value is doing. You can see a growing trend, and you can see that they maintain a high level in the 99th percentile here. Scopus content coverage. This is a link that if by chance you ever want to dive in for a little bit more information. So let's say 2017 is the very first year that site score takes into account, and we might want to view the citation information attributed there. So as we click through, we see all of the documents. I want to take the last complete year into account. So you'll see I simply say the last full year of 2020, update, and now everything recalculates. There's a bit of a plateauing here, and it's something that we can now visualize and say, is this something that we expected, or are we expecting the same growing trend? Down below, you'll see all of the documents, and you'll see some totals by year. And you have the ability, of course, to click into any one particular. So in this case, let's just hit this 281. And now I'm going to be able to view that citation information. As you can see, I've got 281 documents in this particular year, and I'll be able to dive into them all independently. Let's go back to our home screen, just point out two more things on this page. First thing is subject area. Yesterday, there was a connect where we did talk about, primarily with the research office, about Scopus data and how it intermingles with SciVal and how it can be used in coordinated effort. Someone on the call actually brought up literature. So what I want to do is I actually want to bring up the area of literature and display that there's actually over 1,000 results in this field. Furthermore, you have the ability to say, 1,000 is a little bit much for me to digest. I only want to take a look at the top quartile, apply that, and just like that, you're automatically at the top 211 results. Anytime you're looking at a page, you'll see everything is the descriptions of the titling is across the top, the ability to sort accordingly, and then, of course, the percentiles in the particular fields. This is Journal 2 of 845. One last area I wanted to just display. I had made mention earlier that there are some folks that track some of the up-and-comers. This is the way in which they actually track it. I'm going to just take two titles that I know represent a high level of output for Georgia State. And the first title was Scientific Reports. So I'm able to find that. And now what I want to do is I want to compare it against one of our other top 4 journals that our faculty publish in. And I can compare that against +1. Add them. And now we see some the plots there. It's interesting that they've actually switched positions as to who the respective leader is. You'll also notice that down below, there's a lot of other information available to you at a glance. But if you locate a couple of titles of up-and-comers, you can easily keep track of them here and continue to plot. Are we seeing an uptick? Are these the types of journals that we're looking for our PhD students to affiliate themselves with? and ride the wave of the increase that this journal is seeing within their respective fields. If there's no additional questions, Scott, I'm just going to move over to search.
There's one question from Jill about how in-depth is the journal coverage for the humanities?
Okay. So let's take a look, go back to subject area. Arts and humanities. We apply. We have 5,207 results. So this is where likely, Jill, you would likely want to begin your search criteria. You may very well want to filter. You may want to export. I haven't touched upon this, but you may very well want to export to Excel. You may want to save it, download it, and work with it in Excel. You may also make the decision that this is too broad. And you may decide to go back and start all over again and begin to take a look at some of the subcategories that arts and humanities is comprised of.
Can I just ask, is it possible to sort by individual to search by individual journal name? Because some of these are more humanities looking than others.
The journal information, yes, it's right here. Title.
Okay.
So that's what I had done when I picked up scientific reports and +1. This is the drop down that I used to pick up scientific reports.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Move forward with search, and again, I'm gonna start with an area where my screenshot before had on the slides had ended. So if I open up Georgia State University, this is actually going to look familiar. It's the second to last slide and was nothing more than a screen grab of this information. What I do want to point out is that there are three different ways in which the authorship, the faculty, is referencing Georgia State University. So as a department head or administrator overseeing, I may very well want to create some guidelines to the faculty and say, here is the uniform way, any of these, or perhaps even something different that we want Georgia State to be referred to. This will help unify. Obviously, we do a pretty nice job of connecting these already, but if in fact you're looking for consistency across the board, across departments, for all published works, this is an area that if you start to see a longer list may become concerning to you. I'm going to start off by diving into this 34,000 document listing. So this is everything that we can attribute to Georgia State that we have. You can see some basic information down the left-hand side that you're familiar with. This is like shopping on Amazon, as everyone knows, and it's a very comfortable feel. You take a look at the heading. You take a look at your selectivity underneath, author name, subject area, the document type, whether or not something is open access, affiliations, keywords, publication stage, country. So these are all filters made to obviously make things easier for you to quickly weed out or take this 34,000 and immediately reduce the number to make it something that's more manageable. Something else that we could do is we could look at this and very simply analyze the results that are attributed to these 34,000 documents. And as a whole, through the course of the years, you see her right here, I may say what I'm really interested in is, first of all, the last complete year rather than a partial year. And I may only be interested in dating back to 2000. So it's as simple as changing the dates, hitting analyze again, and you'll see the system automatically calculates. And now we can witness the growing trend over the last 20 years of documents by year. On the left side, or embedded within as well, you can actually see the number. You can click through on any one particular year of interest if you want to catalog those documents for further discovery. And down below, we've got a lot of other information as well. I'm just going to click on two. The first one I'll pick is documents year by source. And you can see directly on those, not only do we tell you the number of document types, but we provide an immediate site score, SJR, and SNP. So it's an interactive map that allows you to see exactly what's happening with these titles and what the numbers actually are behind each one of those points on the graph. You'll also realize that down on the left-hand side are all the sources, so you're able to select in or select out titles at will. I'll go into documents by subject area as well. So we have a nice graph here. Other is broken down, shows you exactly what the areas are in the documents. And then, of course, again, live links to each one of those. Let's just say, for argument's sake, we wanted to take a look at arts and humanities. It came up again before. So now I'm down to 2,164 results. Looking at the tighter date range. And now perhaps from here, I do my fine tuning of refining results for deeper analysis. Okay. Back to affiliations, right here. And what I want to do now is I want to take a look at the authors themselves. We want to take a look and see, okay, we've got 7,800 authors over the course of all time. And let's start off with that as a group. Now, again, same thing with refining results capabilities down the left-hand side. For illustration purposes, I'm simply going to go with Vince Calhoun, who's at the very top. Seems to be the most prolific of all authors in this time frame that we are looking at. A couple of things I need to point out here. This graph is going to populate in just a second. I wanted to point out all of the author information. And this is that affiliation connectivity that I had referred to a couple of times during the PowerPoint. The author, the papers, the affiliation to the institution. It is all here and accurately laid out for you. Dating back all the way to 1993, and you'll see many of the affiliations are overlapping. You will also be able to witness the subject areas that this author has published in. And of course, some Scopus ID information and a direct link to an ORCID. Okay. We have the ability to directly export to SciVal. So if this is by chance a person that we want to keep track of from an high institutional point of view, I could simply hit export to SciVal, and that individual then shows up on my dashboard, and it's someone that I can track over time. Okay. Back into here, we see the number of documents, the number of citations, along with the H index, the topic areas, and we do have the ability to analyze this particular author's output. So in addition to this graph, which is essentially the citation overview, if I were to click on Analyze Author Output, it's going to take us to some additional detail, which allows us to visually see exactly what's happening with the document source, by type, by year, by subject. This is all on an author level at this point, along with where they're actually publishing. Down below, I know that there are some folks that are likely performing cited searching. And one of the things that Scopus makes easy is to one-click do cited searching. In this particular instance, I'm in an author right now, and I'm looking at that author's body of work. But in one click, I can actually see all of the documents that have cited this author. So this is a cited search based up, linking back to the person. Okay. You will also see 64 preprints here that we're tracking, the co-authors, and being able to dive deeper into the topic areas. Of course, we always have the ability to change your sort. Now, I don't particularly care for this layout as compared to the layout that we are familiar with, the Amazon pick list search. So I have a tendency to always work my way back to this sort of a screen, being able to refine my results and dive in deeper. In this particular case, I wanted to highlight one particular article because I know you're going to be interested in seeing what sort of detail is there. I'm going to click on this fourth one, and I'm going to walk through this page with you. You can see all the journal information on top, along with the titling and the authors that worked on this particular work. You will also be able to see the abstract, some of the indexed keywords, topics of prominence, as I made mention to briefly before, is located here. And in a glance, I know that this topic cluster is extremely hot, and it's likely going to have a lot of funding. At 99.939%, there's not a whole lot more space between that and 100. So it's an area with great momentum. Obviously, if you're so inclined, you can always take a look at some additional information with regards to chemicals, the funding details as well. Only thing that I will point out here is that if by chance your institutional subscribes to Funding Institutional, which Georgia State does not currently, but who knows, maybe down the road, this is a direct link then into our Funding Institutional platform and being able to dive much deeper into funding information. You'll also see the references attributed to the creation of this work. And then up here, you'll see the cited documents. So now what I can do is a cited reference search on this article, and in one click, I can be at those 808 citing documents and use them for analysis. Last but not least, up on top here, Plum X metrics. I'm not going to click through simply because of time, but what I am going to do is expand and just reiterate that we live in a world that goes well beyond citations, and particularly for different areas. Arts and humanities is very different than the hard sciences. And there might very well be a lot of views and a lot of captures and a lot of mentions in other areas other than just citations. That's what we're able to take a look at here. And it's something that if you're not familiar with PlumX metrics, I would urge you to take a look at it because I think it's a more robust viewpoint of exactly how much impact you're having on the market that goes beyond citations. Okay. Back to the home screen. Just real quickly, some subtabs. Documents by source. So we're able to actually take a look. If I wanted to click through this 204, let's say, I have the ability then to use our 204 published works with +1 and then just filter results, or perhaps create a data set and do some analysis on that. I should also point out that there are some patent results that do in fact populate. So we do capture patent information that is referenced in the works as they're found in Scopus. We have the ability to highlight some collaborating affiliations for you. So in this case, if I were to click on this 1619, I might be able to select all and export them for further discovery. This is a really nice way to make use of something like SciVal as a tool as well. The hierarchy of your institution, you can visualize it, and this is where you can see the differences between the two numbers up here, documents as a whole institution versus documents affiliation only. And you can see how the affiliation has been built under the University System of Georgia. And then lastly, the documents by subject area. So I know we have used this before. Let's just open that. And now we got 27 and 18 documents in the area of arts off of the home screen. And from here, I can perform analysis. Just like a lot of these products, there's multiple ways to get to the same point. There's no way to break it. I would implore you to use as many different approaches as possible. You're bound to find something interesting. And now with that, I'm going to wrap this up very quickly with the two things that you're probably most familiar with: author searching and then document searching. So what I can show you briefly is the author tool that I made mention. This is actually a former colleague of one of my colleagues. And she uses this all the time as an example of the ability to quickly request, if in fact you are this author, to merge authors. So we know that this is the same author as this author down here and this author down here. In reality, we have captured through our algorithms 466 of the 468 works this author has produced. But if by chance this author said, hey, you didn't properly tag it, they could very simply check these off and make a request. There is a process associated with this that validates this, but they could certainly make the request and begin the process moving forward. What I want to do is highlight one of your authors who showed up in a number of my searches in preparation for today. And this is both in Scopus as well as CSAB. And what I've been able to determine is that this particular author here, actually, and again, I can show all the author detail. This particular author here has not only been one of your most prolific authors from the dates 2015 to 2019, but this particular author has also been one of the most cited authors. So again, it serves as an opportunity to highlight, keep track of, perhaps tag, export to CSAB, create a group, and allow you to track an individual or perhaps the entire group. So if this is, let's just say, an arts and humanities professor, you could take the entire arts and humanities staff, put them together, and track them as an entire team in CSAB. And the last highlight for you is the document searching. This is probably what you're most familiar with, which is why I left it to the end. We do have plenty of advanced document search capabilities here. You can add individual fields, but in this case, if we just did computer and science without the quotes, you will be tracking each one individually. Within the quotes, we need to see them together. We could truncate this with a wildcard as an asterisk to see if there's any particular variations. The methodology is exactly the same, and the execution of it is what you're familiar with. So in this case,
Damien,
yes.
there's a question, is it possible to search an author by ORCID ID or Scopus ID?
Scopus ID, now, Scott, you're going to have to, let me go back to, you're going to have to help me with this. Scopus ID is something I've always looked up as an individual, really when I'm looking for authorship. But if I go into here and I go to the, what is it, author? No.
But it has
to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the affiliation. There's your ORCID.
Yep, exactly. So you can search on ORCID ID.
If we went back to this real quick, wrapping things up, perhaps this is just too many. Let's deal with the exact time frame that's height score. Let's also page down and say we want US only, and we limit them to, and if I were to take a look at where is it? Okay, 2020. And if we click into any one of these in particular, let's do deep learning. Now we're right back to looking at individual article. You will see this has been highlighted as a combination word. This is the individual word. So we know this particular article was tagged in this search because of this representation. Okay, and with that, we have a few minutes for any outstanding questions. No questions? Okay. Well, with that, I will, as I said, I'll provide it to Kenyatta. He will circle back. Kenyatta, you'll circle back with Laura, I suppose, so that she can
Absolutely.
distribute. You'll get a copy of the presentation from today as a reference. Obviously, the trial is active, so they can actively be clicking and searching on their own.
That's correct. Yeah, I would encourage everyone to access the trial. I think Laura may be putting that out there on how to access it, and it's up till July, early July 6th, I believe it is. I wrote that down.
Yes,
So-
that is correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I will repost the link. I think you, whoops, that's not it. Hold on just a second. I think you can just go to Scopus and get to it by clicking on institutional login, but you can also go to this A to Z list link and go to the trials section on the right-hand side of the page, and there's a link to it there as well.
Right, but you're right, Laura. You as long as you're authenticated through Georgia State's network, as of now, you should be able to go right to scopus.com is another access source. So just an FYI. So with that, we will end here. Thank you all so much for the opportunity. And as I said, Laura, we will be in touch. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Damien directly, and we can certainly address those or assist you with any issues that you might be having with the trial.
Okay, well, thank you all of you so much for this. We do appreciate it. And Kenyatta, if you send me the recording, I will share it with the people who asked me for it. And any questions can come to me as well, and I will get you answers. So thank you so much.
Stop the
Thank you all
recording.
for